All right, I'm going with it's a hockey hat, but I'm going with the wrestling shirt. Matt Hardy, because he's likely going here, but he's been over here. So we're far enough, I think, into AEW's existence where we can take a look at where AEW's getting things right, where WWE gets things right, and this kind of thing. And you know what's interesting to me is anytime that I look at an article that's related to wrestling online right now, there's a line. AEW, WWE. And for whatever reason, WWE fans want to complain about everything AEW related, and AEW fans want to complain about everything WWE related, like you can't like both. For instance, I enjoy basically every episode of Dynamite. I think AEW does well. We'll get into the parts that I think are weak. WWE, they knocked it out of the park with SmackDown this week. In a challenging situation, that was the most entertaining SmackDown I've watched in ages. There wasn't a fan in the stands, there was no pyro, and it was great. So honestly, it shows that, all of these frills and everything that WWE has done for years, that they have to make it this big over-the-top entertaining thing, nothing is better than just good old-fashioned wrestling. And not only that, I also want to say, while talking about SmackDown this week, being able to hear during the women's tag match at the start, these women talking to each other, and the little back and forth and some of the stuff going on, it just felt more real and less staged, and that's important, I think. So I've always thought that wrestling's better off without announcers. Now I'm starting to think maybe it's better without fans on some level too, because then you're not playing up to the fans. You just relax and be yourself kind of thing, right? There are a lot of wrestlers that you can tell are playing up to the fans, and sometimes it's weird. Guys come out like, yeah, and they're like, you're trying to make me cheer for you. I hate that. Boo, this guy gave me the finger. That's awesome. You're cool. I don't understand wrestling fans at all. And I've been on that side too, where I've cheered for the heel and booed the face. So I'm just as bad as anybody else. So in these categories, and I came up with these off the top of my head, because I'm thinking, when I watch wrestling, what matters? Presentation. WWE has the presentation over AEW. When they talk about AEW feeling like the old WCW/NWA, and I'm not talking about the NWA that's still around now, I'm talking about late 80s, before it became WCW and everything fractured off. And Ted Turner bought it off. When it was the old NWA, that's kind of how AEW feels right now. And then you've got a lot of guys who are related to that old NWA in there as well. Tully and Arn come to mind as for instances. It does feel that way, and I do prefer the presentation of WWE. I prefer the general feel of it. And I'm talking about the general feel, which was not changed by having SmackDown in a gym this week. The actual wrestling, it depends what you want. The overall wrestling in AEW, I think, is better. But part of the reason it's better is because they don't have pay-per-views. Not on the same level as WWE. WWE, everything is building to a pay-per-view. So you have a match in WWE, you're at most 3 weeks away from a pay-per-view. So you have, let's say, Kevin Owens is fighting against Roman Reigns, and they're going to fight each other at the next pay-per-view. Well, you have to make a kind of a schmoz finish or not a clean finish because you want to make sure they both look strong. AEW doesn't have events that often, so you can have Kevin Owens beat Roman Reigns, and then the following week you can have some other interaction about that result. AEW is very good at building up wrestlers while they're actually losing the matches, which is something WWE struggled with, because when guys lose in WWE, very often it's either quick or, because you have so many finishes in WWE that are DQ finishes and all over finishes. Watch What Culture, watch Ups and Downs with Simon. He has fantastic takes on that. Simon Miller is he's at this whole level. We're talking about wrestling. I can't get there. But it's true. WWE, I think, spends so much time trying to make sure everybody's protected that when they let somebody lose clean, we as fans, we're conditioned to go, they're burying that guy. Look, he lost. He lost clean. It wasn't a surprise roll-up. It's a clean loss. So it makes it so in AEW, you can see a guy lose and the next week still take him seriously as a threat. WWE, kind of the way that they structure their results, you go, oh, this guy's in the toilet because he lost a match. So that's what makes the wrestling better. Now, when you watch pay-per-views, I think where WWE's kind of missing the mark a little bit, their pay-per-views are so damn long now, and there are so many matches that go beyond 20 minutes, or at least it feels like they go beyond 20 minutes, whether they do or they don't. It's like, holy, this is still going on. It makes it tough. Because you know at the start of a match, well, I can come back to this in 15 minutes, and you switch over and go watch something else. Because now we have a different model where you have the channel, so you don't really care. It's not like you paid $60 for it, where you're like, I paid $60 for this, I'm watching every minute of it. No, it's another channel, so you're like, I'll come back in 15 minutes. And you get back 15 minutes later, and you're like, they're still in a rest hold. So I think the wrestling favors AEW, and I think when they have varied length of matches, and they do have wrestlers lose. A good example of a wrestler who's lost a lot and hasn't really lost any momentum is Britt Baker. Britt Baker, fantastic, but we'll come back to that. Commentary. Commentary's kind of a wash because it depends who's on commentary in WWE. You got so many different shows. I love Mauro Ranallo, to be honest. I love the guy. I know he takes a lot of criticism and a lot of heat, and I know people get all upset because he talks about being depressed and he's bipolar. And yeah, and he's open about it. And thank you for being open and making it so that for people who feel that way in life, they don't feel like they can't talk about it. Let me just make these check marks a little bit wider. I'm just looking on the camera and I'm going, yeah, that doesn't really show up all that well. So, yeah, that's better. That's better. All right. Commentary, though, I do like AEW's, but where AEW's falls apart, I love Jim Ross. He's not the same guy. He's not the same Jim Ross. So while Corey Graves drives me absolutely mental, and I'm saying this right up front, Corey Graves was a good announcer in NXT. He was. I really enjoyed Graves in NXT. He is driving me mental on the main roster, which tells me it may very well be lines that are getting fed into his ear, that he's parroting these lines, and they're just terrible. But still, if I had to choose between the two right now, I would go with WWE for commentary. I think, generally speaking, I know there's NXT. NXT's announcing is really good, always really good. That's why I feel like they're probably allowed to say things more than just what's being said in their ear. So commentary overall, I give WWE a bit of an edge. AEW, as they expand their programming, and the plan is to have a second program during the week, AEW Dark will eventually be a weekly program on television, and AEW Dark has some good commentary as well. I would think this could very well change to where it's a saw-off, but commentary, I'll go with WWE. For promotion, nothing beats WWE for promotion right now in the wrestling world. I know New Japan's very good as well, and that there's other companies around the world that are good. But for this, I'm just going with AEW and WWE. AEW is still finding its footing there. They're absolutely still finding their footing there. WWE, just by virtue of having been around for so long and so many people watch them, that it's very easy to promote. And they do quite well for themselves. I can't compare live events because AEW doesn't do live events. So, roster. This is where it gets kind of tricky. You can't go against the AEW or the WWE roster because it's so deep. This roster in WWE is so absolutely insanely deep. One of the things that when AEW came out, I said, I like AEW because we finally have a place for guys to go who are completely lost in the mix in WWE. And then I see people online saying, they're just WWE rejects. You know who was a WCW reject? Chris Jericho. Another one was Paul White, who became Big Show. These guys went over to WWE. They weren't a big deal. When Eddie Guerrero went over to WWE, not a big deal in WCW. He was getting buried. None of these guys were beyond mid-card. They went somewhere else, they became big stars. So just because a guy's mid-card here and goes over here doesn't mean that it's just nothing. Who cares? That guy goes over, who cares? Luke Harper, who cares? Matt Hardy, he's old, who cares? That mentality was something WCW had when guys were going to WWE, and they learned pretty darn quickly that was the wrong attitude to take. So I don't think WWE's taking that attitude. That's why you see guys are getting extra months tacked onto their contract due to injury. But again, this really favors WWE overall so far, right? Women's wrestling, I would have given that to WWE. But it feels like women's wrestling is starting to kind of go backwards. And I understand they were the main event of the Elimination Chamber, but it was just a match to build up Shayna Baszler. And people have talked about it. Well, that was a perfect booking. And people online just complain all the time. No, it wasn't perfect booking, and here's why. You had an Elimination Chamber match where it was Asuka, it was Shayna Baszler, and a bunch of mid-carders, none of them were going to earn that shot at Becky. And we all knew Shayna Baszler was going to be in it. So unless you're going to have Shayna Baszler and Asuka and have 4 other people in that match who might threaten Shayna Baszler, like, I don't know, a Rhea Ripley type, even Toni Storm, throw somebody else in there. But when you throw in Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott, who just returned, and Sarah Logan and Natty, they're not going to threaten. So that's where I had a problem with the match, was when I looked at it before it even started, I went, why is this the main event? It should have opened the night. The main event should have been the tag match, I thought. But, maybe the women were given a bit of a bone because of Saudi Arabia. They don't get a whole lot of attention. They might get a match here and there, but they don't get a whole lot, right? So that's how I kind of interpret it, was, you know what? They're trying to build up Shayna Baszler, and they're trying to appease the women's division after those Saudi shows where they probably don't get a whole lot of the money. But, again, when you look at AEW, there's a lot of great women's wrestlers in there. Hikaru Shida, fantastic wrestler. No idea what's going on with her, because the booking is crazy. So in the men's division, it's very, very logical booking. The women's division, it seems to be all over the place. And there are some really good women's wrestlers, like Chris Statlander got built up as #1 contender, loses to Nyla Rose, and now she's out of the mix or something. Britt Baker is fantastic. Absolutely. She is fantastic. And for whatever reason, I understand her being a heel, but why she's not more in the picture for the title, and now they bring back Bea Priestley to get... And I like Bea Priestley. I do. Hopefully that brings Jamie Hayter back in as well, and they go in as a tag team as they've been in Japan. Just showing I know what I'm talking about here. They're women's tag team champions in Japan. So for women's wrestling, really, to me, it's kind of a saw-off between the two. I'm gonna give both of them kind of just a dash, because I don't know right now. The overall depth of the roster is better with WWE, but the AEW wrestlers are really good as well. It's just the booking seems to be all over the place. Like Riho loses the title and then bye. And with the women on the WWE side, I don't know that I like the booking over there either. Now writing, I'm going to give that to AEW, because it feels like, from what wrestlers are saying, there's a nice, happy, healthy check mark. The writing side of things, it's a huge check mark. Almost looks like it's going down to ownership. It's not. We'll get into ownership. The writing side of things, I really like what AEW is doing, because it feels like the wrestlers have far more say. And that's been the scuttlebutt the whole time. Wrestlers will have more say in their promos, in their feuds. You look over at WWE, the Randy Orton Edge thing that's absolutely fantastic is working, because the wrestlers reportedly are in control of what's being said and how this storyline's playing out. It is the hottest angle in WWE in ages. And notice, there's no title involved. You don't have to have titles involved in every single feud. And yet it feels like with WWE, well, we got to slap a title into this feud so people care. No, if you build up your wrestlers properly, you don't need a title. You don't need one at all. Just make the fans care about the actual wrestlers. And I think AEW does that quite well. There's something else that's not on the board, and I'm going to write it on this side, because AEW has that going on right now, and I don't know that WWE has it going as well. So ownership. AEW, you got Tony Khan. Do not have Tony Khan on TV. I've noticed in a couple episodes of Dynamite, Tony Khan backstage and wrestlers talking to him. Don't do this. Don't do it. One thing that has been really, really nice with AEW compared to WWE is we haven't had this ownership, powers that be kind of thing going on. And this, and there with WWE, you always have your GMs, your owners, and your don't do that. And it feels like WWE is going to go back to that, where we have a GM on every show. It'll happen. Don't do it, because it just, then the whole show revolves around that. So I don't want to end up with an AEW where it's Tony Khan's going to talk about this tonight. Don't forget, later on, Tony Khan's got an announcement. Oh, this guy hit Tony Khan. What's going to happen? Don't do it. Don't fall into the WWE's pattern of where Vince has to get involved and it's big feud. Oh, Vince is going to be here tonight. What's Vince? No, don't get into that. But when we talk about ownership, we have to talk about money making and all this stuff. And WWE has that. They have that in spades. I know people don't like how Vince McMahon micromanages Raw and SmackDown and everything else. I agree. But as an owner, he knows how to make money. Now, CM Punk famously said he's a millionaire when he should be a billionaire, and it was a great burn, and it's true, but still, he is capable of making some money, and he's made it so that when he decides to retire, I know there are people who want him to retire, there are smart minds in charge who can take over. Now, there is one thing that I didn't put on here that I think AEW is proving they can do. I give a damn about Darby Allin. I didn't. The first time I watched AEW, Dynamite and Darby Allin came out, and I'm like, okay, so he's, 150 pounds, and he's got half of his face is painted like the Day of the Dead thing, whatever. Dios Muerta, that kind of thing. Yeah, whatever, right? And he's half dead, and I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. Dark Order came out, and I'm like, what's Dark Order? What? This is weird. And all of these, I like Luchasaurus. I'm like, what is a Luchasaurus? But interesting thing that's happened, despite Jim Cornette's yelling and screaming about it, Cornette will yell and scream about it. Trust me, he yells and screams about this whole thing. They are creating stars. While WWE is relying on going back to Undertaker, going back to Goldberg. Oh, we have Goldberg. We're going to put the title on Goldberg. And then we're going to have Goldberg against Roman Reigns. Why? Was there a fan anywhere that asked for that? Because I'm going to answer as a fan right now. I never once thought, you know what would be great? If the Fiend, that's become this really great villain that looks almost unstoppable, if Goldberg could just beat him in a couple of minutes, that'd be awesome. The nostalgia acts in WWE feel very much to me like what was going on with WCW as it got close to the end. Where somebody would come in and they'd win a title and you'd go, I don't know that they deserve that title. Weren't they moving on? Bray Wyatt is brilliant. Bray Wyatt proved again on SmackDown. He couldn't do the Fiend act because they were just in a gym, so he comes out as Bray Wyatt from Firefly Funhouse. And he's great. He is the best at delivering a promo in the company. To me, Bray Wyatt rivals Jake the Snake Roberts when it comes to cutting a promo. You don't need to yell and scream when you're cutting a promo. Jake the Snake talked even quieter than the Faces did. The Faces were doing all the yelling and screaming. He just come out and whisper into the microphone. Because he knew it was scarier to be quiet. It was scarier to say fewer words. Bray Wyatt gets it. And they showed on WWE, they had the FCW show. See, I watched WWE programming too. They were talking about FCW, and they showed how, and that's Florida Championship Wrestling, where they used to develop their stars before the whole NXT thing came in. And how Bray got it right out of the gate. His ability to cut a promo was fantastic. And Dusty Rhodes didn't really have to do a whole lot of work with him because he just got it right out of the gate. And he got it in a way that his dad never did. Mike Rotundo was a very, very good wrestler. And when he became Erwin R. Shyster, which was a weird character thing, he was good. But his son, Bray Wyatt, is just so much better. And it is so insane to hear some of these promos. He is so good at it. So the ability to create stars to me goes with AEW. So AEW first gives the title to Chris Jericho. And you could look at that and say, well, see, they gave it to a guy whose best days are behind him. They gave it to somebody who they knew would get mainstream attention. They gave it to somebody that they knew WWE fans and maybe lapsed wrestling fans would go, what's going on over there? Jericho's over there. I thought Jericho was WWE. So they watch. Now they've given it up to Jon Moxley. Moxley's the champ. Jon Moxley, known to WWE fans as Dean Ambrose. Moxley is a megastar. Now, when I see people saying, well, he's one note. He's one note. He can only do one character. Yeah, I got two words. Stone Cold. Steve Austin, he added some words and catchphrases along the way, but he was still Stone Cold. That's who he was. And Jon Moxley, when I see him, he's just Jon Moxley. And he's awesome at being himself. Which is what The Rock did, which is what Steve Austin did, what all these guys did during the Attitude Era. They were just being an amped up version of themselves. So we didn't have to see like a million different forms and, oh, okay, what kind of acting range does he have? It's not about acting. It is about the ability to get other guys over. Moxley, that you can build up as a big star, which he is. So when he loses that belt, whether it's to Pac, Kenny Omega, Darby Allin, whoever he loses that belt to, now takes that mantle as that big name too. Now Pac, absolutely fantastic in the ring, and amazing with promos. And I have to say, WWE really dropped the ball with this guy, because one area that's not on the board, but it's important, is WWE has forgotten one thing WCW didn't learn, that they did. Being a smaller wrestler doesn't mean you can't be a champion. Being a smaller wrestler doesn't mean you can't win matches. Somewhere along the way they went, this Braun Strowman guy, that's great. We'll just throw him out there and he can run over 5 or 6 guys. All right. All these big guys. So instead we've got small guys getting fed to Brock Lesnar. So rather than having really good matches, they get fed to him. Apparently the only weakness Brock has is his testicles. That's it. And it makes the whole thing look ridiculous. It does. It makes it look ridiculous. Not only that, if you're a good guy and the only way that you beat the bad guy is by kicking him in the testicles, you're not the good guy. That's not how a fight works. That's back to schoolyard days when I was a teenager. That's not how it works. If you won a match by kicking the other guy in the cojones, then you didn't win that. Come on. You don't do that to another guy. Come on. So there's a problem there with, and that comes back to writing and creating stars. You want to make Seth Rollins a star, beating Brock Lesnar? You haven't beat Brock Lesnar. He doesn't need to go low. He doesn't need a low blow to do it. But, again, WWE, in order to make a smaller wrestler beat a bigger wrestler, well, there has to be some way that he does it illegally. Over in AEW, going back to Darby Allin here, when he's against 5 different guys from the inner circle, you still go, this should be entertaining. So where WWE would take a Darby Allin and feed him to Brock Lesnar and make it over in 30 seconds, AEW will make it a 15-minute match. He still loses, but he loses a handicap match to Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho, and it's entertaining the whole way. Jon Moxley was his partner. He's taken out. You've created a star. He still loses. The end result's still the same, but it's how he gets there. And he doesn't, there's not a whole bunch of chicanery and low blows going on from him. And it just works. I think they're doing a better job of creating stars in AEW. You look at the reaction that some of these wrestlers get when they come out, and it's insane. And it's a reaction WWE is trying to get for wrestlers. But because of 50-50 booking, where you win, then you win, then you win, then you win, and you just go back and forth. Or they bring in Humberto Carrillo, really, really good wrestler, loses everything. And then apparently, and this is online rumors, Vince, he's not getting the reaction I want, so we're gonna bury him. He hasn't won anything. The crowd doesn't take him seriously as a threat. It'd be like Braun Strowman being in the ring. Like, who's gonna get these hands? And me going, all right, Yvonne, I'll be back. Hold my drink. I'll be back. I gotta go fight Braun Strowman. Not a person in the crowd that's gonna be like, oh yeah, Shannon should do this totally. It's just the same thing when Humberto Carrillo comes out. So of course they don't take him seriously. And it is for this reason that I do prefer, between these two companies, I prefer to watch AEW. Because it feels different. It feels new. The writing and the wrestling are, I believe, better here, and the ability to create stars. You better ownership, better roster. The depth of the roster of WWE makes that just you cannot argue that the roster is better in AEW. You can't with a straight face. There are so many. You get into NXT, NXT UK, Raw, SmackDown. There are so many really excellent wrestlers. Promotion, yep. Commentary, I think, is better in general with WWE, though it's close. And the presentation is off the charts for WWE. The Pyros, just their ability to put together these huge events in these giant arenas, it's great. But writing, wrestling, and creating stars. So while you may have less check marks on this side than this, I do prefer, and I'm saying prefer because I watch both, I do prefer AEW. So there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And yeah. Let me know what other areas you think are important when it comes to wrestling. What other categories do I not have up here that you think are important? And who do you think's winning in that area? AEW or WWE? Thank you guys so much for watching. Oh, before I end, I want to say as well, because people are going to mention tag team wrestling. Yeah, tag team wrestling favors AEW. It's not close because WWE tag teams are clearly an afterthought. Throwing Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy. He's Buddy, not Murphy. Throwing them together, just giving them the titles right away, the way that they just throw two guys together and give them the belts. While Kenny Omega and Hangman Page kind of feel that way, really wasn't, and it was really, really nice how they did it, and I'm really fascinated by how that's going to go. And Page, Adam Page might end up being the biggest star in the entire company by the time it's all said and done. So let me know your thoughts on that as well. I will talk to you again soon.